Good afternoon. This is Dr. Alvin Marcelo calling in from the Asian Development Bank, room 4204. We are the Standards Health Information Network with support from WHO, ADB, UNICEF, NORAD, and other partners. Today, we just completed our meeting with Dr. Susan Roth on updates regarding the interoperability lab. And with me in the room right now are the lab experts, Mr. Philip Zuniga, Ms. Rose Ann Sale Zuniga, Ms. Pearl Gasmen, Engineer Randy Fernandez, Ms. Cherise Orhalo. Um, this is part of our shared webinar with Gembi. I see that Carl Furi is on the call right now, and also Dr. Fazila. Later on in the open forum, I hope that we can invite some of you to ask questions regarding my presentation and some other uh, uh, ideas that we can work together as part of the AHIN community. Um, So the topic that we agreed from our last webinar was how to implement an OpenHIE in your country. And I'd like to take this opportunity to share what we know in the Philippines, how we developed the OpenHIE as our template architecture for the Philippine Health Information Exchange. So a brief outline of my presentation over the next 20 minutes. Something very quickly about OpenHIE for those who are in the audience who still do not know what OpenHIE is. I can see that a lot of the people chiming in are already well versed with OpenHIE. Why OpenHIE? Which countries have adopted OpenHIE? With drill down on the story that we had in the Philippines, some challenges that we are facing here in our country and in other countries, and then some parting key points on what you might want to do when starting OpenHIE. I do not pretend to be an expert in OpenHIE. There are other experts in the call. If you have any questions about technology, we have Carl Furi from Gembi here. If you have any questions about the interoperability layer and other components of the HIE, I'm more presenting this from the story that we went through in the Philippines Department of Health, Philippine Health Insurance Corporation in UP Manila, and how we were able to get from a point where OpenHIE was just an idea we're now using for health insurance claims. So OpenHIE is short for Open Health Information Exchange. For those who are not yet familiar with the model, I'd like to present it now. It is composed of a middle layer called an interoperability layer, and then with the registries at the bottom. TS is the terminology service. CR is the client registry or a master list of clients or a master person index. SHR is a shared health record. HMIS is Health Management Information System. FR is Facility Registry, and HWR is Health Worker Registry. At the top would be your point of service systems, which could be your clinic information system, an electronic medical record. For bigger facilities, you might have hospital information systems. If you're a drugstore, you might have a drug inventory system, a pharmacy information system, a blood bank information system, or what have you. So you might consider the things at the bottom as the registries and that are resources that are available to the applications at the top, which are the point of service systems. The key element in an OpenHIE architecture is the interoperability layer and its ability to orchestrate the communication between point of service systems to each other and the ability to connect point of service systems to the resources at the bottom, and do it in an efficient way to allow for effective health data exchange across facilities. Okay. So why OpenHIE? Well, it's a framework, it's an architecture that's freely available. We can access it at ohie.org. It uses international standards. Maybe the hidden slide after this is why not OpenHIE? If you want to have a fragmented health information system, if you want to have the problem of putting data from different health programs together, and you can't do it right now because they're all using different standards, then that's what happens if you don't have an interoperability architecture like OpenHIE. So OpenHIE basically is pay anything, all the resources are available online, and I think that's the reason why we in the Philippines have adopted OpenHIE. In addition to the Philippines, we know for a fact that Myanmar and Rwanda have adopted this. I hope that in the open forum, Carl can also share some of the other countries that he knows who have adopted this. We cannot put yet on the screen Vietnam, Cambodia, Bhutan, and Indonesia because they have not yet come out on record officially that they have adopted the architecture, but they have already expressed interest through the Asia eHealth Information Network that they'd like to know more about the OpenHIE architecture. So I won't be surprised if after 1 year we would have more countries here on this list. I think we're just being careful right now in saying that the countries are already adopting OpenHIE when, as a matter of fact, they don't yet have the formal policy stating so. So let me talk about the Philippines because that's where we operate, and also the context within which we are now running the Philippine Health Information Exchange as a part of the National eHealth Program of the Philippines. So the story behind the Philippine Health Information Exchange, which is patterned after OpenHIE, is that we adopted the WHO ITU National eHealth Strategy Toolkit way back in 2012. And in the middle, you can see the eHealth components, figure 2, which are the recommended components of the National eHealth Strategy Toolkit. And on the third, on the right, would be the proposed governance model for a national eHealth governance structure. So we basically adopted the toolkit. There was a joint memorandum agreement between the Department of Health and the Department of ICT, or DOST, Science and Technology, which basically are the national representations of WHO, which is the UN Agency for Health, and ITU, which is the UN Agency for ICT. So our two top government national agencies for health and ICT came together and formed the National eHealth Governance Structure. And right after the Minister of Health and the Minister of ICT came together, they suggested to include the President and CEO of the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation and the Chancellor of the University of the Philippines, Manila, which is the National Health Sciences University. And then from then on, that governance structure evolved. Covered most of the components as indicated in the WHO ITU toolkit. Of note, we have the top-level National eHealth Steering Committee, and then under them would be the National eHealth Technical Working Group. And then there would be other working groups depending on the needs identified by the National eHealth Governance Structure. So we have a standards expert group, we have a privacy expert group, we have a health enterprise architecture expert group, We have a monitoring and evaluation expert group. We have a risk management expert group. Private sector are convened and consulted in the advisors group. Then we gathered all of the frontline electronic medical records that are being used in public health facilities, and we were able to identify 6 of them. And together they formed the Electronic Medical Record Expert Group. And then the IT departments of the Department of Health and the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation and the Department of ICT, together they formed the IT Expert Group. So these expert groups were created by the National Health Steering Committee of the governance. This is the governance aspect of our Philippine Health Information Exchange. And they help fill in the gaps, so to speak, in terms of policy and strategy when it comes to implementing a national scale interoperability system. So I would really emphasize the governance aspects of the OpenHIE implementation. I think the reason we have an OpenHIE implementation, which we are calling the Philippine Health Information Exchange, is specifically because we were able to establish this governance structure. I think we would not be able to have any mature discussions and serious deliberations about OpenHIE unless we had this wide group of people with coming from different degrees of discipline and inclinations, talking about the need for interoperability and agreeing that we needed to have a common architecture to inform all the work that we are doing, whether it's standards, privacy, electronic medical records, or what have you. One of the early agreements of the Minister of Health and the Minister of Science and Technology, which later became the Ministry of ICT, was to adopt an IT governance framework. And assurances needed to be achieved at every step of the way. So they adopted the COVID-5 framework, IT governance framework, as a guide as they join hands and together go through the journey of developing a national health information systems interoperability project like the Philippine Health Information Exchange. So the COVID-5 framework is downloadable for free at isaca.org, isaca.org. You can read through the framework, and it's basically a guide for countries and for enterprises that are engaging into very complex projects such as national health information systems. In COVID-5, if I can point you to the box called APO03, that would be the third box on the right on the second row from the top. It's labeled Manage Enterprise Architecture. So according to COVID-5, one important process in IT governance is the ability to manage your enterprise architecture. And that's basically the trigger by which we have the Health Enterprise Architecture Expert Group. That Health Enterprise Architecture Expert Group would then oversee this particular process of managing the National Health Enterprise Architecture. The methodology or the development methodology that we are using right now is based on TOGAF, or the Open Group Architecture Framework, which basically flows from the top where you start setting a framework and your principles, and then you go to an architecture, setting your architecture vision, defining your business architecture, letter B, defining your information systems architecture, and then your technology architecture, so forth and so on. Going through a cycle iteratively so that you continue refining and maturing your enterprise architecture that you're using for your country. And so this is a similar slide to what I showed earlier on, except that it's flipped. the registries are at the top and the point of care systems are at the bottom. Based on that architecture development framework, one of the important principles of TOGA have a particular need, then it is incumbent upon the architect to look at the environment globally, regionally, nationally, and locally if there are already existing architecture artifacts that can be reused for your particular business case. And so that's basically what happened when we were reviewing the need for a national interoperability framework. We looked at the global environment and looked at various methodologies by which health information systems are made interoperable, and that's where we found out that OpenHIE is one such architecture framework that we can already adopt. And it did not have financial blocks, so to speak, because the OpenHIE architecture was freely available, and it had a ready community that we can tap in case we had questions about components of the OpenHIE architecture. So that's what basically are the architecture that is the basis for the Philippine Health Information Exchange. Now, extending this, the National eHealth Technical Working Group is now adopting an architectural approach to developing national information systems, and they have released this registration process where, I'm sorry, the fonts might be too small. If you are a health software or health application, then we would ask you to register your health application to the National eHealth Technical Working Group, submitting a application form and answering questions sequentially, essentially just to be able to capture which health software or applications are out there which will have an impact on national health program implementation or policy making. So if you have a health application that does not have any impact at all at the national health program policy making or implementation, then it's okay. We'll just receive your application and we'll just register it into our database. But if your system, your health application or software will have an impact later on in national policy making or national program implementation, then we ask you to go through a series of questions that you need to answer. Are you going to request for funding? Are you going to ask for your module to be added to the electronic medical record running in the frontline facilities? So based on your answers to these questions, we would then ask you to do some things like registering your software, submitting your concept note, registering your data elements in the National Terminology Service, and registering your workflow and your forms to the National eHealth Technical Working Group. The idea behind it is to be able to maintain the repository of artifacts like your terms, your workflow, your forms, your interface, such that these artifacts become reusable across all the other systems being used in the healthcare system. It's a very young process. We've just started this this quarter, and we don't have the verdict yet whether this is going to work or not, although we have started to receive applications from the mental health program people, the osteoarthritis people, and the surgery people. So we think that it's just a process that we need to start using and monitoring whether this is actually helping us establish good governance for national, good governance for health software that have impact at the national level. So now that we have good governance, we have adopted the OpenHIE as our architecture based on the TOGA methodology. What challenges do we face? A lot. So first is, whereas we have agreed that OpenHIE is our architecture, we need access to experts who have knowledge about OpenHIE, its components, and have experience in their implementations. We need access to existing implementations and learn from them, and also what they have learned when they were evaluating this implementation, so that we can skip the mistakes and go straight to the successes. We need to understand what are the business cases for health information exchange, because we found out that it varies depending on the country priorities. For example, in Myanmar, their country priority was to connect their HIV database applications with the TB applications. But in Vietnam, it would be to connect their vaccine information system with their outbreak information system. The business cases vary, but in fact, the OpenHIE architecture can be reused on either situations. In the Philippines, our business case is electronic claims, submitting electronic claims to the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation in exchange for reimbursements. And we found that it has been a very powerful incentive / disincentive to adopt standards at the facility level for electronic reporting. We also had challenges on accessing tools, software, training, and test protocols. And I think it's just because of the early stages of the laboratory, now that we are in touch with GEMBI and in Mohawk and instead in other similar labs, I think we can quickly accumulate all of these tools and test protocols. So after we've decided to adopt the OpenHIE model in the Philippine Health Information Exchange, one of the breakthroughs that we had in governance was to assign a responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed matrix for the Philippine Health Information Exchange. So what you see here right now are the responsible agencies for each component of the OpenHIE. What you don't see here is the accountable agency. The accountable agency is the National eHealth Steering Committee, which as I said, is composed of the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of ICT, the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation, and the University of the Philippines, Manila. The responsible agency for the interoperability layer is the Department of ICT. The responsible agency for the terminology service is the University of the Philippines, Manila. For the client registry, it's the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation. For the shared health record, which is basically the database and the corpus of all the electronic claims for now, is the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation. For the health management information system, it's the Department of Health. For the facility registry, the Department of Health. And for the health worker registry, for now, it will be the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation. So coming up with the RACI matrix also helps in understanding which agency is supposed to take care of which component of the OpenHIE. It's a very complex architecture made up of many components. And as you can see, if one component does not work, there's a possibility that the whole system might not function very well. So it's very good to have very clear designations on responsibility on each component to make sure that each component is working at its optimal level. So I think from the Philippine experience, in summary, these are the important steps to answer the question, how do you adopt OpenHIE in your country? I think number one, there needs to be a clear governance structure that makes decisions. OpenHIE is a complex architecture. It will require investments from government, from academe, from the National Health Insurance Agency, just to study it. And so if you don't have a good governance frame in the architecture, you might find yourself in limbo, not sure about whether you're going to study it or not, because you're not actually confident that you are going to get political support to proceed with the adoption of the architecture. So that's a very important yes, no, go, no go type of decision making if you want OpenHIE implemented in your country. Do you have a governance structure that can make decisions for the country regarding this architecture? If your answer is yes, then you can now look at the global environment, regional environment, and see if there are architectures that are that can fit your interoperability requirements. In the Philippines, we saw OpenHIE, and we selected it as our architecture for interoperability. The next question is, who will be the responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed people for each component of your OpenHIE architecture? Then, for each of those agencies that are responsible for those components, do they have a program management team capable to implement or execute that assigned component of the OpenHIE for them? On top of that, do you have an overall program management team talking to these component program management teams that are part of the OpenHIE architecture? It can get very, very complex. And if you're not organized very well, it might be possible that no one's orchestrating the whole thing, or somebody's orchestrating the whole thing, but there is one component, for example, the client registry or the terminology service, that is not functioning very well. Number 5, you have to have a monitoring system set in place. I mean, all of these things that we are building are technically intensive, but at the same time, it's supposed to deliver business value or business benefit to the Department of Health. So there must be a monitoring system in place that while we might get lost in the complexity of all of these technical aspects of installing a client registry, a terminology service, interoperating a clinical information system to a hospital information system, the monitoring system is clear that it should be delivering value to the National eHealth Steering Committee, whatever the value system has been decided upon by the governance structure. So as you can see, the governance is very important at the beginning because they will be the ones expecting and extracting a monitoring accountability system for the whole Philippine Health Information Exchange. Lastly, from the ground up. You can do it. It will take time. I think Asian countries can do it given the right time and the right tools. But it can be faster if we work as a network. If we have access to international networks from Mohawk in Canada, from GEMBI in South Africa, if we work with regional labs like INSTED, the ANGIS lab, and we tap local experts like faculty in the different universities, IT experts in hospitals, private hospitals, and public hospitals, I think the learning process will be faster, and we will be able to adopt and implement the architecture much faster if we have a good network like ourselves working together, trying to achieve the business needs of our National Health Information Exchange. So that will be my last slide, and I'll be happy to answer questions. Cherise, you might want to manage the open forum. Thank you very much, and I think we will start with our open forum. If you have any questions, please, Cherise.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Alvin. We have a set of questions here. So for the first one, it's from Dr. Agarwal. It reads, where does blockchain and MongoDB fit in an OpenHIE model?
Okay, so that's a very advanced question. Off the bat, let me just go back to my slides. I think it would fit in the interoperability layer because blockchain can be used in any component of the system that you want to have ledger capabilities. So if you want if you want to have transparency in your transaction, that's basically why you might want to adopt blockchain. And you might want to have transparency in almost all of the components of the OpenHIE architecture, but mostly at your point of service. So I would say blockchain for the interoperability layer and for clinical information systems, especially for electronic claims, thinking blockchain might be an important component in electronic claims, especially if you have a claim that needs to be broken up into several pieces. some parts of the claim being paid for by the National Health Insurance Agency, and then some parts of the claim being paid for by private insurers, which is a real use case in the Philippines. Blockchain will be very, very useful. But Carl, can you chime in and let me know if you have any other ideas about how to answer that question? Go ahead.
Thanks. Thank you. I think you've, through your discussion, you've raised the concept that I wanted to touch on, is that blockchain is a technology and a real approach to something, and it needs to be driven by the use case where it's best suited. What we've seen in some projects is technology driving the solution, where there is a hit and miss chance that that's going to actually work. But what we look at is where does the advantages and features and pitfalls of blockchain fit or not fit to certain use cases. In our room here, we've got Martin Weiss, who's working with us on some cross-border patient tracking and anonymization, but still being able to identify persons. So we're looking at how blockchain supports that. Sort of anonymous identification and unique IDs at the same time. And so it seems a bit like an oxymoron, but it is a need when you're trying to track sex workers or people who are not willing to give their identity yet need to be uniquely identified. So I think that to sum up, blockchain has its place as a technology within the OpenHIE architecture and framework once you understand what the components and the function of the architecture need to fulfill, and how that particular technology can best meet it. Also remembering that one needs to account for the local capacity that's required to manage advanced technologies or newer technologies. We've had some experience of putting the wrong technology in the right place for the right reason, but not having the right people around to support it in the long run. Thanks, Alvin. Back to you.
Yeah, I fully agree with Carl. And I'm posting the TOGAF methodology framework on screen right now, because what we might want to avoid is a technology-centric approach to solving our problems, when as a matter of fact, we might not have specified the problem completely. And that's why the TOGAF methodology constrains everyone to first make sure that you have frameworks and principles, you have a clear architecture vision, and then you have to define your business architecture first. So to answer the question about blockchain, blockchain would be somewhere in C and D in the development methodology. But I won't even go there yet unless you have a clear A and B. To go to blockchain without the clear use case or the business requirement or the clear business benefit, it will have to play a role somewhere. But having that hunch is not enough. We need to go through the discipline of defining our framework, principles, architecture, vision, and business architecture, and then finding a good fit for blockchain when it comes to information systems architecture, technology architecture, and opportunities and solutions. And in that sense, the OpenHIE architecture is very generic. You can apply blockchain if there's the right business case for it in any component and in any workflow or interface of the OpenHIE architecture. Charisse?
Yes, thank you. The second question is from Dr. Sambath. What are the basic requirements or checklists that a country needs to check before OpenHIE implementation?
So thank you for that question. Checklist, we basically go back to our Mind the Gaps framework, Dr. Sambath. Do you have a clear governance structure in your country that can make important national level decisions? Because the OpenHIE architecture can be an architecture for nationwide health information interoperability. So who makes that decision is the most important first question. It's the G in the gaps question. Is there a governance structure And is the governance structure making a decision about adopting an architecture? The second question is, if they've organized themselves into a governance structure and they've agreed to use an architecture, are they adopting OpenHIE? If they are not adopting OpenHIE, then what architecture are they going to adopt? If they have decided to adopt OpenHIE, then do they have the people and the program management capability to install, configure, connect each component of the OpenHIE architecture to each other? And lastly, are they clearly setting the standards for interoperability across all the different stakeholders in their country? So the checklist, to quickly answer the question, the checklist is mind the gaps: governance, architecture, program management, and standards and interoperability.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Alvin. The next question is from Dr. Agarwal again. Is the Philippine Health Information Exchange the national exchange of connected regional exchanges, or is it one of the several exchanges reporting to a parent exchange?
So right now we have a National Health Information Exchange for a very, very simple use case, which is to submit a claim from an outpatient frontline clinic to the National Health Insurance Agency. So I would not even call it a full-blown Philippine Health Information Exchange. As a matter of fact, we call it PHIE Lite because it's actually just exchanging data from a frontline clinic to the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation in exchange for reimbursements. So, what's the question? Can you highlight? So it's a national health exchange right now. In terms of implementation, what the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation did is they certified 7 health information technology providers to distribute the load of 1,600 hospitals, sending information to the corporation. But the architecture is still OpenHIE. So national exchange, to answer the question. Carl?
Thanks, Alvin. And just to add to that, I'm really glad that you brought up that it's not everything that you want it to be in an information exchange. And that's something that we've been working very hard in the OpenHIE community to convey that message. It's not an all or nothing approach. We spoke about this 2 weeks ago in the Mythbusters session on OpenHIE. Because OpenHIE is an architecture, it's also an evolutionary architecture and an implementation-driven approach, where the recommendation is to use the parts that you need when you need it. And as you start implementing that, you also keep a lean and mean governance framework. It focuses your use case, as also provides you, as you've gone through with the GAPS framework that the AHA network has brought out. It really provides a focused way of doing it. So the point I want to bring across to those on the call today is, don't make the mistake of thinking that if you don't have all the architectural components, it isn't OpenHIE, or that OpenHIE requires you to have all the components at once. It provides a framework by which you can look at your key use case and evolve from there. And another beauty of a good architecture, and what we've strived to see here, is that the OpenHIE architecture protects your existing investment in software and or architectural components by creating a framework to show how these components can link together to serve a use case. I think that's something just to ponder on as we, as leaders in our various communities, organizations, and governments, bring these concepts to our peers. It's not an all or nothing approach. It's an approach that allows you to protect your existing investment and build around it in a sustainable way. Thanks, Elvin. Back to you.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you. Next question, please.
This one is from Dr. Goat Hammond. We are implementing eHealth program in our state and have piloted eHMS with SCM in a few health facilities. as a precursor to the e-health program. We wish to know more about the interoperability layer.
So this is a question about the interoperability layer. Dr. Bala is from the state of Telangana from India, and they're implementing it. And I think the question is more on the interoperability layer. So I'll ask Carl to answer first, and then Philip, who is our interoperability expert here in SILA. Carl, what is the interoperability layer that you use in GEMBI? Over.
Thank you, Alvin. The interoperability layer technology that we use in GEMBI is the Open Health Information Mediator. You can find that information at openhim.org. It's a tool that we've built from the experience that GEMBI had in implementing the first health information exchange in Rwanda, which basically became the framework for the OpenHIE architecture. From a technology platform perspective, for those who are interested, it has two components. It's built using the Node.js framework to provide rapid scalability and performance, and it has a Mongo database for the performance side of the database too. But that's not to say that is the only interoperability layer technology or solution that is out in the world at the moment. There are a range of companies that are providing integration platforms for information exchange in the commercial sector. There are commercial tools as well as open tools and technologies. We've chosen to build our own for a range of reasons, but first and foremost was that we needed something that was very lightweight in comparison to the other technologies that were around at that stage. We originally started with a Mule ESB base, which we highly customized to meet our use cases. That ended up with about 150 megabyte install file and package, which we were just thinking was a little heavy. Today, the Node platform comes in at, I think, under 5 megs, fully functional and highly scalable, moving that forward. But also as part of the OpenHIE communities, we have our interoperability layer community itself, which is a group of us who are really interested in understanding what an interoperability layer should be doing to service the information exchange needs of particular use cases. What we're working on and will be releasing in the next 2 weeks is the OpenHIE's functional requirement specification of what OpenHIE constitutes the minimum requirements that an interoperability layer needs to fulfill to be seen as an interoperability layer within the OpenHIE architecture. I'm happy to dive into different points around what GEMBI's interoperability layer does. If we may also put that up as a demonstration on this call in the next few weeks, if that's a community ask, we'll do a run through of the interoperability layer. But I'm going to hand back to Philip and Alvin on your side. Over.
So just to introduce, Mr. Philip Zuniga is the one we have assigned to the interoperability layer, working closely also with Carl regarding this. Philip, share your experiences.
Just to add, the interoperability layer is like the secret ingredient in OpenHIE. It is the one that connects the different platforms with the different databases. For the Philippines, we had a survey of different interoperability layers. We made a study. We compared different enterprise service buses, and then we had a study. We compared how efficient an HIE will be with an interoperability layer versus a point-to-point HIE, and we were able to show that despite the overhead that is caused by the interoperability layer, overall the benefits that will be obtained, it outweighs the cost. We are also currently looking at OpenHIM from Carl. We are currently working on a local HIE where we are trying to connect BAMNI and OpenMRS-based DMR, and we are using OpenHIM. So I can confirm that OpenHIM is really lightweight. it has mediators where you can connect the different applications over.
Thank you, Philip. So I hope that in the the webinars that we have, projects that we've been implementing using our technologies. Also, maybe the people who are joining this call, like Bala and Mayank, can also share some of their experiences. Maybe just give me a chat if you're interested in sharing more about the work that you do. Next question.
We have 3 questions from Dr. Agarwal. The first one is, how can we as an organization further OpenHIE in India?
Oh, okay, wow. So, wow, India is a very important country in our region, very big. I know that it's very challenging governance-wise because you're a federation of states. One state actually is even bigger than the Philippines in terms of population. I still go back to our Mind the Gaps framework. What would be the governance structure that India would adopt in terms of interoperability? Would you have a national standards body telling everyone that these are the standards, these are the architectural artifacts, and therefore, if you want to develop any system, you should get it from this box of artifacts? Or will it be light touch and basically take a devolved approach and let every state define their own architectural framework for as long as they hook back to the national system using this light touch architectural framework? I'm a Filipino. I cannot impose on the Indians what would be appropriate for you. It's your country, the context. You are more well versed with your context and your needs. What I do know is that there must be a discussion about this. Any architecture that is just on paper and it's not transparent and not accessible to all the stakeholders in the country will probably fail, for the main reason that no one knows about it and no one has asked enough questions or has had enough opportunity to ask questions about the architecture. So an architecture must be discussed. An architecture must have a way to be disseminated and shared with as many stakeholders in the country as possible. There must be a way to get inputs and comments from the different stakeholders and to be refined so that it becomes an architecture that is shared by as many people as possible, as opposed to a top-down architecture. Having said that, I am not a implement these types of architectural development methodology, so don't take my word as gospel truth. In the sense, we all need to go through the process of defining our governance structures, defining our architectural frameworks, and learning from each other. Thank you. That's a very important question.
Yes, follow-up question. How can AHIN or the WHO ITU provide us technical assistance?
Oh, okay. So WHO, you can access them through your country office. So just send through the Ministry of Health. So the Ministry of Health sends a request for support for OpenHIE or for e-health governance, IT governance. That goes through your WHO country office, and then that might go to the regional office, whether you're in CIARO or WIPRO. Yes, you can mention AHIN if you want AHIN to be of support to you, and then it will find its way to our AHIN Working Council, and then we find ways to fill in the gaps, so to speak. So whether you need support in governance, architecture, program management, or standards interoperability, we can help you with that. So AHIN, as a matter of fact, we have helped Vietnam, Indonesia, Bhutan, Myanmar, and Timor-Leste on what we call the Convergence Workshop. So the Convergence Workshop is a Ministry of Health-led event that gathers all the different stakeholders within the ministry and with other ministries to help them mind the gaps, so to speak, create a governance structure, define an architectural framework, and then from those two steps, identify the roadmap moving forward. So yes, please course it through your Ministry of Health, to the WHO country office. Feel free to mention AHIN, and we can help you along the way if this is what you want to do. Thank you.
Another follow-up question, Dr. Alvin. What are the basic building blocks or technical competencies required at our end to be able to initiate a discussion or dialogue with you?
Oh, Carl, can I ask you to answer that question because you've been doing this much longer than we have? So the question is, what technical assistance, what competencies are required at the level of the country to be able to initiate a discussion with AHIN, WHO, ITU, and maybe about OpenHIE? How did you do it in Africa? What capacities for HIE journey? Over.
Thank you, Alvin. I think that's...
Are you there?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me clearly?
Yes,
so that's a great question, and the answer is different in every context. It's like how long is a piece of string, but I think fundamentally the things that we're going to be looking at is, aside from competencies, there's also the authority and mandate to have these conversations. If you're looking to adopt OpenHIE at a national level, well, there needs to be an empowerment or a delegation of responsibility to be taking that forward. I think some competencies that we want in the room is to temper the competencies of technology and make sure that we have the clinical and medical expertise available too. Technology looking for a problem is somebody running around with a hammer looking for a nail. We're going to find something to hit. Whether it's the right thing or not is another question. So in terms of competencies, what we look for and encourage with a team looking to adopt an OpenHIE architecture for a particular problem is we need to be able to frame and understand the problem, as well as identify what the intervention is that's going to see an improved outcome. So if it's maternal health, we need to make sure that correct maternal health policymakers, the experts are in the room who understand how large scale and health system intervention design is going to be playing a role. But at the same time, as the medical groups need to be available to say, this is the intervention we're looking for. From a technology perspective, some of the competencies that we find very valuable to be engaged with are those groups that have an understanding of architecture. That architecture doesn't necessarily relate one-to-one to a particular software technology stack, but that we can look at how a component needs to function and what it would take to actually manage this architecture in the long run. So you mentioned that in your corporate framework there, the management of your HIE that gets put up, or any information system, it's never static, it evolves over time. So the ability to understand how to put that together is very, very valuable. And also those who it's really good to have software teams around as we move through the TOGAF framework to rapidly iterate over your vision, your business case, your information models through to your technology, and see how those in an agile process evolve towards what your architecture and the instantiation of that architecture can be. So to summarize, if we have a few people around the table, I want to make sure that there's a policymaker and decision person who has the mandate to drive this from a national level. We want to make sure that the groups who are going to be driving this forward from the health sector are involved, and then those are going to be responsible for picking up the implemented solution, and from the ICT side of it around the table. With a minimum of those three, I think we can start having a discussion that can bring forward a high-level centralized framework in terms of what an architecture could look like. The next step would have your point-of-care systems that you've got on the screen at the bottom here, engage in the conversation to actually understand what the changes are in their workflows, as well as their technologies to be able to leverage the architecture once instantiated. Thank you, Alvin. Over to you.
Thanks, Carl. So the Philippine answer to that question, the same question, is there must be at least one national e-health focal point authorized by the Minister of Health. Then under this national e-health focal point, he or she should have a e-health program management office or team. It's a lot of work in getting all the stakeholders together, making sure that there's an agenda, that people are attending the meetings, that people are talking about the same things, that the topics are moving forward from meeting to meeting. And the authority coming from the Minister of Health is very important. Delegated to this National e-health focal point, and then this National e-health focal point with the muscle power of an e-health program management office. So in the Philippines, our e-health program management office is made up of 5 young people, and our National e-health focal point is the director of the Ministry of Health, Knowledge Management and Information Technology Services. So to me, those would be what work in the Philippines. Of course, they by themselves would not be able to do this, but with the authority provided by the minister, plus the engagement of the different stakeholders, I think we were able to evolve from a small group of 5 people in 2013 to now a group of about 60 to 70 people with different expert groups on specific topics. So it has to evolve. And I think the minimum would be authority from the Minister of Health to a national e-health focal point. Thank you. Last question, Charis, and then we'll wrap up and then discuss the topics for the next webinar.
So the last question is, can you enumerate what are the different business cases that you had?
Okay, so for Asia, I will answer, and then Carl, he will answer very quickly. For Myanmar, the interoperability business case is to identify HIV patients that also had TB. So these patients were on separate databases, and now they wanted to use the OpenHIE architecture to identify which ones had HIV and TB. In Vietnam, to identify which of those patients that were already vaccinated still got infected and are reported in the outbreak database. In the Philippines is to find out which citizens who have presented themselves in the outpatient clinic are claiming for claims from the National Health Insurance Corporation in exchange for financing or a capitation fund. We don't know yet the use case for Timor-Leste and Indonesia, but we can find out soon. Carl, what do you have in Africa? Over.
Thanks, Sullivan. So we've got a few general use cases that spread across some countries. And so, for example, I know Tanzania and Zambia both have immunization use cases underway. There's tracking of immunizations of newborns. In Mozambique and a few other areas, we are also looking at a civil registrations and vital statistics use case that's being moving forward. The original Rwanda use case was maternal care, linking community health workers through to clinics and finally deliveries at district hospitals. In South Africa, we've done Mom Connect, which is a pregnancy register use case, which is tracking and onboarding mothers to health informative messaging using an HIE infrastructure. In Rwanda at the moment, we're also investigating with a few other countries HIV case-based surveillance that's being evolved, and we're looking at how that's coming together. And then in the West Africa region, during the Ebola outbreak, the IntraHealth team put together the mHero suite, which is an HIE-based approach, and that's looking at health workforce mobilization and responding to disease outbreaks. So those are the few that just jump off the top of my head that have been implemented and are being looked at. And I think in the Western Cape, we're busy at the moment with a combined HIV-TB use case for an HIV implementation. I hope that helps. Over to you, Elvin.
Very good, Carl. I think our responses to the questions we should also put on our Confluence page so that it's accessible. We were recording this also. All right. So as we agreed, we will alternate the lead for the webinars every other Wednesday. So next time it will be Gembi, right, Carl? And what topic do you have for us for May 17, 3 p.m. Manila, 9 a.m. South Africa? Carl?
Thanks, Alvin. So yes, we'll be leading the next OpenHA, well, the Asia Afro OHIM meeting. And I think next week, well, the next call, what we'll be looking at is an introduction to the interoperability layer. Since this is a key component of the HIE infrastructure, it's the backbone that brings it all together. We'll be presenting a functional requirements document that we've been working on. Richard over here has been doing a lot of work on that. And also then take that and show you what it looks like in the OpenHA reference technology, which is the OpenHIM. So in 2 weeks' time, we'll be sharing the concept of an interoperability layer and what the OpenHIM tool looks like. Philip, I'm going to put you on the spot and say it'd be great to have you on the call and to share a little bit of our design and ideas from there.
Perfect. So I'll be on travel on May 17, but we will continue. Philip will be at the helm for Sila on May 17. And then on May 17, maybe we can do a crowdsourcing for the next topic, Carl. That would be interesting. Which particular component will be interesting to the people who would be joining the May 17 meeting. All right, so we'll see everyone on May 17, 9 a.m. Africa and 3 p.m. Manila. Thank you very much for those who attended this meeting, and we'll see you on May 17. Thanks, Carl.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you very much, Dr. Fazula. Bye. Bye, everyone.